Okay, so in a previous episode, I was talking about how, like, John would do stuff where you felt like you were in the Matrix. Now, Tim would do stuff like this too. Tim had some crazy stuff, but John as well. And so, one of the things that Tim would do, I'll start with Tim. Tim would be like this, and he'd be moving with you. And sometimes, like, say you got close to his face, like you were going to hit him, and he would turn his body, bring that hand around, and just whack you from these crazy angles. And it was like the Matrix. He wouldn't move his feet. He'd just move his body. It almost looked like those, those balloons you see, those clown kind of balloons you see out there by the, by the car dealerships. But it was a very smooth, graceful thing. It wasn't this sloppy, flappy, floppy kind of stuff. Now, John, on the other hand, when he moved like that, it almost looked, how do I want to describe it? It almost looked like ballet. That's about the best way to describe it in terms of the fluidness. Where John would move and it would be like this, boom, and it would just be this fluid kind of movement where you would see him moving in a way where you could see him leading and pacing people, changing the tempo in between. And this is the reason why you couldn't see what he was doing. So John used to call this concept and how he moved like this, striking from the void. Now, Musashi talked about the same thing, but I believe from a hand-to-hand perspective, John really nailed it. And that is, Musashi talked about, the void, striking from nowhere. When Musashi was being trained by his Zen Buddhist master, Takuan Soho asked him the question, where does the master swordsman strike? Musashi gave him kind of like the Scooby-Doo answer, and he's like, nowhere. And when he's trying to get him to understand, it's like, listen, dude, you got like a 41-inch razor, in your hand. How good you got to be, So when John would strike out of the void, what he was talking about was a mindset, a thought process of how, from wherever he was, whatever position he was, how he could align his body at the right moment, at the right time, and strike from seemingly impossible positions. So John would be moving with you, and all of a sudden his body would be in some weird, awkward position, and he would just hit you and blast you like into the next phase. And you're just like, how in the heck did I get hit? And you don't see it coming. He would move, and he would do stuff like this, where it looked like he was going to bend over and touch his toe, hit you, slap you, and he would just do these kind of things. And sometimes I think people misinterpreted that, and where they started moving like this, like trying to be like the Matrix. And what they were misunderstanding was, even when Tim would be in here moving like this, more like a boxer, because Tim's actually, his flow, when you watched him, when he started doing inside stuff, it looked almost indistinguishable from Bagua or Wing Chun. I mean, my point is, what can I say? Truth is truth. A lot of times even Tim and John kind of almost look like boxers and how they move. Truth is true. It works. So when they would be moving like this, people would misinterpret, especially when John would do stuff where John looked like he's turning away. And then that hand would come around and hit you in the back of the head. As this is how you want to move. And it's like, no. He always moved in a manner that was congruent with other people. When he would add his feet to it, then it would take on a different dimension where he was using his feet to cut off angles, stop you, or reposition you, or to get you to step to different positions. Sometimes he would bring his knee up like he was going to hit you. You'd go to intercept, and then he would pull his leg back and hit you. I mean, he was just doing all kinds of stuff. And so two of the exercises that John in particular used to have me do, Tim used to make me do this mostly on the wobble board, but John would make me do two basic exercises, which I think any person, I don't care what you do, if you practice these exercises, whether you do karate, kung fu, kickboxing, jiu-jitsu, it'll greatly improve your mobility and your ability to control your equilibrium as you move. And that was polishing the sphere and washing the body. Now, polishing the sphere, from my observation, because I used to correct this all the time, many people used to screw it up. And the reason is, and Tim even corrected me on it, many people, when you see them polishing the sphere, they look like they're the first time, if you've ever gone like, roller skating or something, or ice skating, they look like the first time you have a pair of ice skates on, they look like this, And that's not how you want to be. As Tim explained, he says, watch how John does it. He says, you notice when John's doing it, it's a smooth, graceful thing. So no matter what he's doing with his body, he never looks jerky. And what he's doing is Tim was describing, he's controlling his body and he's controlling his balance. The other thing Tim talked about was, and I'll probably cover this in a subsequent video, you want neutral balance. And what he meant by neutral balance is, you want to be able to control your balance where, as they say in Tai Chi, you want a route that no one can find. And that's what John and Tim were talking about. So when John was moving like this, what had me moving like this, even picking the foot up, because Tim wouldn't pick the foot up. He would just demonstrate to me how you could move like this. You could clearly see they were shifting, changing, rotating, just doing all kinds of stuff with their body freely to develop this ability in their body. So when they needed to suddenly accelerate in a different direction, their body wasn't all over the place. The other one was washing the body. And the washing the body is crucial, in my opinion, just like polishing the sphere. And the reason is, as I'm moving and I'm washing the body, and what I'm doing is I'm pretending like I'm giving myself pressure here, but I'm not just moving my arm, I'm moving my whole body in a way where I'm training the muscles in my body to be able to move like this when I need to, based on the stimuli I'm experiencing. Now, when we were little kids, we moved like this all the time. So this is not rocket science. Basically, when you practice that, you're really awakening all of those things in your body, that memory of how you used to move like that anyway when you were a kid. Because anybody who growing up when I grew up, when your mom was getting ready to spank your butt because you were doing something you shouldn't have been doing, right? You didn't stand there and go into tension. You were like the Matrix, man. You were like, whoa, 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 right? So the washing the body and polishing the sphere, it helps train you internally to be able to move and control your body like that. So when you're dealing with another person and say, I need to move my arm, but I don't want to give up my position because I have this ability to do that, I can do so. And this is kind of the stuff that John and Tim would do all of the time, trying to get people to be able to do it. And unfortunately, like anything else, because we're all human, and we all have a tendency to make things harder than they have to be. People would overcomplicate it and make it into, now from here, I'm going to get loose and do this. No. Where is his hands? Right there. Where are my hands? Right there. Oh, okay, here we go. Where are my hands, Frank? Oh, I'm sorry. Were you supposed to lose? So I go like this. And so because his body is doing the same thing that my body's doing, it's just a matter of, kind of who gets ahead and who gets there first. But it was just really, really cool how they could do this. And so when John would strike from the void, he would, within movement, within these little micro movements, he would be able to hit from places based on feel, literally out of the ether. You had no way of understanding where you're going to get hit. One more thing I want to cover to make sure I get this in, and that is when John would strike from the void, he and Tim also knew that within this range right in here, this is your binocular vision. That's why, when you're in school, they tell you to read with a piece of paper about 14 to 16 inches away from your face, because as you get closer, that's when you get cross-eyed, right? But they also knew, as they got close to the body, in these areas in here, it was outside of your peripheral vision. And so a lot of times, John would be in here, and he would tool replace. I'll get into tool replacement stuff maybe in another episode. And his arm would slip out, and it would follow the contour of your body, but outside your peripheral vision. So you only got kind of a shadow impression of what his body is doing, but you couldn't see his hand, and you would lose track of it. Tim kind of said to me, anytime I lose track of a person's hand, that's when I know I better be hitting. Because John told him the lesson too many times. So they would do things like this. Like one of the things that John would do is he would get past you, he would touch your body, but he would never hit you. And the reason he wouldn't hit you, because he knew if he hit you, you'd go back. Or you would respond. He would touch, and his hand would slide right up, and he would hit you in the throat. But it would happen so fast, it felt like his hand just appeared there. When in fact, no, there was maybe a little light touch where he got close, but he was putting his hand in a position where he knew you couldn't see it until it was too late, because he was always striking from the void. I mean, he was always doing some other stuff, but that's his way of striking from the void. The void is the place of unlimited possibilities. John understood that as he moved his body, you know, it's kind of like a basketball player. No matter how many fancy moves he does to get to the hole at the end, it's still just a layup. So it's the same thing. No matter what I got to do to clear your arms, and I just move a little more natural to clear your arms, at the end, it's still a shot. Whatever I'm going to do, it's still a hit. You know, a punch is a punch, a kick is a kick. You know, as Charlie Nelson used to say, always like that saying, you know, a kick in the balls is a kick in the balls is a kick in the balls. His point was, it doesn't matter what strike you throw to the guy's balls, or, you know, whatever fancy kick you can throw. Just kick him in the ball. So, you know, when John was just striking from the void, he would just be hitting you. He had no real particular place he would hit you. And the reason was, if you could punch as hard as he could with those stone hands, you know, it's kind of like when you got a hammer, you know, how good you got to be. So anywhere he hit you, even if he hit you in the arm, you know, it just hurt. I remember him punching me in my elbow one time by accident. He didn't mean it. I went to move, and he hit me in the elbow, and he pulled it. And he went, "Oh, you okay?" I said, "Yeah, I'll be fine." And then, like, later on that evening, I had like a little Easter egg on my elbow, like a little, you know, a little fluid sac, you know, from where he hit me. So, you know, I had to, the answer was, you know, don't try to block his hand with your elbow, man. But that's the stuff they would do.